Hello everyone, welcome to World Cricket Chat. I am Shruti Chopra. Hi Suneer.
I am Suneer Chowdhary. Hi Shruti, how are you?
I am doing good, I think.
You are. Just a minute back, before we started with the podcast, you were a little disappointed with India's performance in that T20 series.
A little disappointed for sure, but India did experiment with combinations and stuff. So I think their whole point really wasn't about going for the kill or the win, and I think it's fine. It's fine to lose a series. I mean, you can't win everything, can we?
One of the rare series that India have lost, I think, since Virat Kohli took over the captaincy. This was not under Virat Kohli's captaincy. Obviously, this was Rohit Sharma. But since the time that he has taken over as captain, one of the very few series that India has lost across formats. So, I also thought that it was a matter of losing the battle to win the big war.
Which is the big war, Suneer?
Which is the big one? It's the big question, the big tournament, the big World Cup coming up. Some might argue that it is not really a big World Cup with only 10 teams participating. And today we're going to be talking about the 1992 World Cup, which had 9 teams participating. So about 26 years on, 27 years on, we're looking at just an increase of one team, not quite a World Cup.
Not much has changed then in that respect, has it? But why are we looking at the 92 World Cup? Why? Because it's your favorite?
It's our favorite. I thought you were happy to talk about...
I'm happy to talk about it because it's your favorite, but we never really get to talk about stuff that's my favorite.
Oh, you're so sweet.
I am genuinely very sweet, Suneer.
I asked you beforehand, which World Cup do you want to talk about? You said, we'll go with whatever you want to talk about. I said 1992. You said nicely, very sweetly, at least at that time, that yes, we'll go ahead and talk about the 92 World Cup. And here you are now complaining about us not talking about your favorite World Cup. I don't even know what your favorite World Cup is.
You don't know, so that shows how important my opinion was.
Which World Cup is this?
2003, Suneer.
Why is that?
But we going to do like a separate podcast for me, or is it just going to be one line for me and a whole podcast for you?
Interestingly, someone had asked on Twitter an unpopular opinion about cricket. What would be your unpopular opinion about cricket? And one of the things that I said was I said two things, but one of the things more pertinent right now is that the 2003 World Cup team for India was a better team than the 2011 World Cup team. The one that went on to win the tournament. Unpopular opinion was pretty unpopular.
Yes, that sounds like you would have hurt a few people. But that's fine. I think we're all entitled to our opinion and our favorites.
I was smart, In 2003 there were Tendulkar, and in 2011 there was Tendulkar as well. So at least that was a common thing. So at least the Tendulkar fans were all right with it.
Yes, I'm sure they would be. But what I'm trying to say is everyone has their opinion and everyone has their favorite for a reason. I know most people would assume when it's a team that you're more closely associated with, it's when that team wins the World Cup that becomes your favorite. But 92, like that's like a different generation of Kosini. I mean, like I think I remember what I was doing on the day of the final.
You would have seen the 75 World Cup as well, Shruti.
Right. Like in my previous birth, Suneer.
Oh, I meant on the YouTube videos. I'm sure you would have seen a few YouTube videos on the 75 World Cup.
75 World Cup YouTube videos?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few videos. Why not? I'm sure. No?
You're just trying to get out of this one after trying to say that I was alive in 1975.
No, I think Shruti is really young by age and young at heart.
Oof.
And we should, I think, change topics and talk about
I think before Suneer gets more cheesy.
And I dig myself further into a deeper hole.
Yes. And before this podcast ends, before we get to know why Suneer...
Before I get punched as well.
Yep. Yes. No violence here, please. But what I'm trying to say is 1992 was a very, very long time ago.
It was.
And why after all these World Cups has that ended up sticking in your head? Like why 92?
Very straightforward
really
answer.
Small then, I'm sure.
Yeah, very straightforward answer. It was my first World Cup watching.
Oh. Thanks for clarifying.
That smirk on your face said it all. I mean, I had a feeling you were going to come back and say, "Oh, did you play the World Cup?" No, I was a young toddler who aspired to. Why are you laughing at that now? I was aspiring to, aspiring to play for the country, as most of us did at that age, and obviously not being good enough. So you end up watching a lot more sport than you play. At that stage, I was playing a lot, and it was the first World Cup that I saw. I was enthused by the fact that there is a World Cup coming up in the lead up to the World Cup. Those were also days where cable television hadn't seeped into India. It was around that time that cable television was coming in. So, if I remember correctly, it was going to be telecast on ESPN, and we were so naive during those days that we called ESPN as some of us called it as Espan. We did not know how to pronounce it. We didn't have Google to check for pronunciation, and we probably said that.
It's quite cute.
It is? Oh, I'm not going to be punched after all. So, basically, I'm going back to the fact that there's a lot of nostalgia associated with it. There's a lot of memories in that sense associated with it. And people usually end up having great long-term memories, but the short-term memory about what has happened, especially with so much cricket, you don't remember what happened in the previous game.
And from experience, I'll tell you, you're exactly like that.
What experience are you talking about?
That I tell you stuff and then you tend to forget it.
Okay.
Yep.
I thought I told you something in 1992, and
I didn't know you in 92.
Exactly. Which I was surprised, but then I should have guessed that you were talking about the negative aspect of not remembering things. So, I mean, that was something which was close to heart because I was watching it for the first time. There was something new. I started watching cricket in '89, not watched a lot of white ball cricket, not watched a lot of cricket in colored clothing. The jerseys of the '92 World Cup. Now that is something that is closest to my heart, the Indian jersey of the '92 World Cup. 2015, I was in Australia covering the 2015 World Cup, and that was one of the first World Cups that I saw that they had brought in the retro kit. Not the players, but they were selling it at the merchandise shops.
Oh, wow.
And the '92 jersey, the India jersey.
Did you pick one up for yourself?
It was the quickest sold out.
Oh.
And the first time I went there, it wasn't available. The second time I went there, it wasn't available. By the time it was the third, fourth, fifth time, I saw it was available, but I didn't have time to pick it up. And unfortunately, I don't have that jersey. And it's not just the India jersey. I think if you look at all the other jerseys, the West Indian jersey, that was brilliant. The maroons that they would wear. I don't like the current West Indian maroons. Those times I used to like that jersey. The New Zealand jersey, very different from the Black Caps jersey.
Very light grey.
Very light grey. I like that as well. The Australian yellow gold has probably remained similar. England, lightish shade of blue. Sri Lanka, if you see, it's a very different jersey. I don't know whether you've seen the '92 Sri Lanka jersey. Very different.
I did actually see that World Cup series.
You did? Oh, I thought you haven't. That's why you're complaining about why we're talking about that World Cup.
I'm not complaining why we're talking about that World Cup. I'm just saying that I know which is your favorite World Cup, but just don't know mine.
We know what my favorite World Cup is because we were preparing for this one, and that is when I told you. I don't think you were born with that knowledge. So I asked you during this podcast.
Terrible. Should have asked me earlier.
Okay.
So the kits were brilliant, retro, and we even saw the Australians donning the retro kit recently.
And it looked wonderful. I mean, they managed to win one match because of that, or not because of that, probably after wearing that.
Please give them some credit.
Please, I wish it. But so that was something that really was enjoyable, and that was something that I hope comes back, especially the jerseys. And I like innovation, but that was something drastically different from what we've been used to watching.
You know, I know you're really enthusiastic about this particular World Cup, and if our listeners could see you, they would see all these twinkle in your eyes as you reminisce back and have this massive smile on your face. I need to take a photo of you today with the sort of smile you have and post it. But there will be a section of supporters for a particular country who will not be very happy with the way things went for them in the World Cup.
Talking about South Africa.
I am talking about South Africa, and that is really painful with whatever has happened to them for the rain rules, and they have just suffered. And the nice thing about South Africa in this World Cup was that initially there were just 8 teams, and South Africa were added on and
late entrant into the World Cup.
Yes, so that was the great part, to have South Africa in it. And I think there were some really nice fielding memories as well. So see, I do remember.
Or probably it's the YouTube videos. But when you have Jonty Rhodes, you know that there will be fielding memories. You know that run out of Inzamam ul Haq, not a bird, not a plane, it's Jonty. But South African fans would not remember this World Cup too fondly. But without being very harsh, which World Cup would they remember very
It's like you've stolen words out of my mouth. I was just going to say that yeah, which one do they remember?
I think this was one of the World Cups that they did not bring that misfortune onto themselves. It was delivered to them by external factors because of that stupid farce by the name of that rain rule. 96 World Cup, played badly in the quarterfinal, lost. 99 World Cup, let's not even get there. For all that Lance Klusener and Alan Donald have done during the World Cup outside, I think that was choking to its worst. 2003 World Cup, again, I mean, if we start talking about the 2003 World Cup, which is your favorite, as we realized, we will talk about the South African capitulation in that game against Sri Lanka. 2007, they were outplayed by Australia. 2011, they were outplayed by New Zealand in the quarterfinal after winning most of the matches. 2015, finally won a knockout match in the quarterfinal. I was there. I saw South Africa win their first ever knockout match at the stadium, and then they lost to New Zealand again in the semi-final. So South Africa not had a great time in the World Cups. 92 was probably one of those times where you would actually feel bad about it because it was not their fault.
Pretty brilliant memory there, Suneer. I must say, the way you've gone through all the
just
World
prepared
Cups.
for it.
Yeah, just easy stuff for you and to remember, considering we're talking about memory. But you know what? Even with this rule, there were teams that even some people would say got lucky, like Pakistan got lucky.
When you ask a Pakistani fan, he'll say no, they did not get lucky because there was another game. You're referring to the England match where they were bowled out for 74. They would say, they turn back and say there was a South Africa match in which they were probably going on to win the match. It rained while they were batting second, and all of a sudden they lost the match.
Right, so it goes both ways sometimes. I thought one very strange moment was when I think 3 overs were deducted off an India-Australia match and only 2 runs were deducted to chase.
Well, on a serious note,
did India lose by one
run?
One run, yeah.
Coincidentally, the 87 World Cup, the World Cup before the 92 World Cup, India had lost to Australia also by 1 run. So India lost to Australia in 2 consecutive World Cups by 1 run, and there was a story there as well, where there was a 4 hit by Australia in the first innings, and during the mid-innings break, they did not have the third umpire at that stage, but during the mid-innings break, the match referee went and checked the replays and decided that was not a 4, that was a 6. So 2 runs were added to the Australian score, and India lost by 1 run. So that is what happened in that World Cup. This World Cup deducted 3 overs because it rained, and only 2 runs were deducted. So why this rain rule?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that. Yes. Why is this such a strange rule?
It was a very strange rule because your worst performing as a bowling team, if you're batting first, as the opposition bowling team's best performing overs were deducted, and the runs scored of those overs were deducted as well. So, for example, in this case, Australia batted first. India bowled their 50 overs. Their best bowled overs, those 3 overs, were overs in which they conceded only 2 runs. So, 3 overs were deducted because 12 minutes were lost to rain, and just those 2 runs were deducted. The reason why they brought about this rule, the intentions were right. The change of rule, because the rain rule was never like this before. The reason why this rule was brought about by the Cricket Australia, or as it was called, Australian Cricket Board at that time, was the previous rule was pretty much in favor of the team batting second. So, team batting first scores 300 in their 50 overs. The team batting second, if they get say only 30 overs to chase because of rains or any other interruptions, they had to chase exactly 180. So their run rate was brought down exactly by the run rate at which the runs were scored. So a team batting first had scored at 6 and over, their run rate was brought down by 6 and over, but they would get their entire 10 wickets to bat. So that was unfair. Just imagine a team has scored 300, which was difficult to score during the 80s and the 90s.
Very.
And suddenly it gets rained off, 30 overs get deducted, it's a 20 over match, and you have to chase only 120 with all your wickets intact. Not a fair rule. That wasn't a fair rule. What they did in turn was to bring in a rule which was not fair for the team batting second this time, which is what happened with South Africa. 22 needed of 13 balls, rains for 8 minutes. Suddenly, it's 22 needed of 1 ball.
Yeah, which was actually later supposed to be 21 of...
It was actually supposed to be 21 of 1 ball because 2 overs were deducted. Those 2 overs were Merrick Pringle's maiden overs. So logically, no run should have been deducted, but there was a leg by in that.
Oh my gosh.
And, well, talk about memorable World Cups. This is as memorable as it could get. Not for South African fans, but as an onlooker, as a neutral fan looking into the tournament, well, bizarre and interesting.
Interesting for sure, but I know we've spoken about South Africa, but anything on an India memory that you have? Come on.
Well, that Australia match that you were speaking about, that was interesting because again 2 runs were deducted, 3 overs chopped off, and you thought that playing against Australia, India had gone to Australia just before the World Cup, played a 5-match test series, played a tri series, lost the test series 4-0, lost the tri series, lost say 5 out of the 6 matches that they played against Australia, if I remember correctly, or 4 out of 5, one of the 2 things, including the final. So they were the underdogs going into the match. And once Australia had scored those 230 or nearly 240 runs, and India needed to chase that down in 47 overs, you thought that Australia were favorites, hardcore favorites to win that match. And going into the last 10 overs or so, again, Australia had in fact, India needed to score a lot of runs. And I have this vivid memory of Sanjay Manjrekar dancing down the track and hitting Merv Hughes for a 6. Merv Hughes was a fast bowler. I think he bowled a slower ball there. And Sanjay Manjrekar hitting him over the top for a 6. And that memory stuck because you didn't expect Sanjay Manjrekar, a batsman like him, to take on the bowling. He was more a technically good batsman, thought a lot about his batting, average 35, 37 and in test match cricket. Not the kind of batsman who would go after bowlers in ODI cricket, and he did that. And then India was still 13 runs short of the target with an over to go. And here we had Kiran More, who hit the first 2 balls of the final over for 4s, and suddenly 13 needed of 1 over becomes 5 needed of 4 balls, and India were in with a chance. He got out of the 3rd ball, attempted a similar lap sweep which we see these days done so beautifully, got bowled, 5 needed of 3 balls, 4 needed of 1 ball, and Srinath hit 1 shot which would have been a 6 at most places. There it fell right into the laps of Steve Waugh, who was running from long on, dropped the catch, threw it all the way from there, and some pretty pathetic running between the wickets bit by Srinath and Raju. Stumps whipped off, and India lose by 1 run. Should have been a 3rd run that would have ensured the match ends in a tie.
That those sorts of ends are reminding me of all those ends that we've grown up watching, that whole 90s kid thing that you've always seen India get to those last few balls and struggle, and bad memories with playing against a team like Zimbabwe.
Yeah, the 99 World Cup, in fact.
Yeah, so that reminds me, when you're saying that, it's like, gosh, that's been going on forever, but at least now it's not so bad.
Yeah, because India, after that 1 loss to Australia in the 92 World Cup, have lost just 1 ODI by 1 run since then.
Oh, wow.
26 years, India has lost 1 ODI. I don't know which was it, but I know that it was just 1 ODI.
That's pretty good. If you knew which one it was, I would be like, damn, you're like completely proving me wrong when it comes to your memory there.
No, I just said my long-term memory is decent. My short-term memory is not too good. So, but yeah, talking about that in those Indian collapses that you're referring to, something like that happened in the India-New Zealand women's cricket third T20 international, and that made me remind of all those 90s matches where India were in the pole position, driver's seat, should have won the match from there, should have won the third T20 from there, Why not to lose?
But in fact, both those, India's last 30-20 and the women's last.
But the men at
both
least
need
were.
16.
Yes, exactly. That was a coincidence, a bizarre coincidence. On the same day, having two teams from the same country needing the same number of runs. But at least India were not really favorites at any stage of their chase. They always needed 10, 11, 12 and over. The Indian women were favorites at different times, especially when Smriti Mandhana was batting. And
that's a completely different discussion on how Smriti Mandhana does really well.
That's
gets
very
India
much
to a stage, and then
that's like what Tendulkar.
The
Tendulkar era was. Tendulkar would bat like the way he always batted, and then suddenly you had.
It would always be like that. Sachin's out. Most people would turn off the TV and go do their thing that they used to do.
Two reasons for that. One, because Tendulkar was such a brilliant batsman, so you would love to watch Tendulkar bat at its peak. And once he was out, the casual on-looking fan who did not care too much about the results, they're happy with what Tendulkar has done, and you move on with their life, probably. There were other people who knew what has happened in the past, that Tendulkar, oh, you belong to the second category. The way Shruti has been nodding her head, shaking the head with the first option. And
the thing is I still have hope that the rest of the team will do well. So I've always watched till the end.
You're talking about now or you're talking about the 90s?
In the 90s, I've had my heart broken, and then it was all revived in 2002, that NatWest series final. So yes, I think the fact that I held on to hope, despite Sachin getting out.
You are one person who is the holding on to hope in real life as well is strong, pretty strong.
I'm an absolute optimist. Anything is possible.
There are people like us who are realists. There are people who are pessimists. You are one of those few people who are very optimistic. But coming back to the 92 World Cup again, we digress too often. That was one of the memories of the Australia match. The Pakistan match, one of the two matches that India won, was another memory with Kiran More jumping around and Javed Miandad giving it back. All these matches, I did not watch them in their totality. I watched bits and pieces of these matches. The Australia match happened on a Sunday. I should have been watching the entire match as a youngster. But I remember having an exam that I had to take, some external exam.
Exam on a Sunday?
Yes, exam on a Sunday. Some exam which my parents had forced me to take.
Your school should be banned.
It was not a school exam. It was something outside the school, and my folks had forced me into taking it. So by the time I came back, I just saw the last 10 or 12 overs. That's the reason why I remember those last 10 overs. I don't remember anything else. I don't know anything else that happened in the match, at least having watched it live. Similarly with the Pakistan match, I came back from school around I don't recollect the time, probably in the afternoon, and that match was still going on, and I watched the last half, the last 20-25 overs, and that incident with Kiran More and the way Javagal Srinath got a couple of wickets, including that of Javed Miandad, and India won one of the rare matches. Won just two matches in the tournament, one against Pakistan and the other against Zimbabwe.
And that's a record that stays, not the Zimbabwe part, the Pakistan part. And that will be interesting what happens this year, because I think it just adds pressure, India have never lost to Pakistan in a World Cup.
92, 96, 99, 2003, 2007 was a World Cup to forget, 2011, 2015. 6 consecutive World Cups, or 6 World Cups out of 7 where. That was in fact the first time India and Pakistan played in a World Cup. They had never played in a World Cup before that. 87 World Cup, India and Pakistan were strategically placed in different groups, favourites to win their group and play different opponents in the semi-finals, which is exactly what happened. And you expected both of them to make it to the final at the Eden Gardens. Both of them lost. Australia beat Pakistan, England beat India, and played in the final at the Eden Gardens.
And let me guess. England lost.
As usual.
Oh, why am I not surprised?
Let's not laugh too much about it, because if there's a World Cup that they might end up winning, it's this one.
Don't we hear that sort of every time?
It's coming home.
Yeah, it's coming home, and then it just doesn't.
And it slips.
It does. And I grew up watching and learning these player names because my brother's an England fan. So I first learned England player names. So yeah, Ian Botham was one of his favourites and the all-rounder, and there were glimpses of him later in Flintoff that people would
But Ian Botham still has a lot of complaints about that World Cup final. He thought or he thinks that England should have won that World Cup final, but because of a variety of reasons, not including England not having played as well as they should have, they lost. Complained about the exhaustion because it was a long World Cup. Complained about only England played, obviously, all those matches at the league stage. England was the only team. No other team played those matches. Played 3-4 matches and packed their bags or got into the semi-final and the final. He complained of the umpiring. He thinks that he wasn't out in the final, which was the reason why they managed not to chase the target. And Pakistan played the way Pakistan played.
Damn. Hey, that's not very sportsmanlike, is it, from an England player?
Well, that's Ian Botham. Ian Botham also had something very interesting to say about Pakistan, and this is not related to the World Cup, but long back, I think this was at the end of a tour of Pakistan, and he was asked about that tour. He said something on the lines of Pakistan is a country where you send your mother-in-law, all expenses paid.
I remember this. I remember reading it like just a couple of years ago actually, and I was shocked.
That's how it is.
I wondered if people generally feel that way.
About the mother-in-law bit?
Yeah.
Different. Well, when I read the statement, this was all those years back when I was a kid, I really did not understand the context. I did not understand the context in terms of why would you use mother-in-law as an analogy. I've heard of a lot of players they complain about India as well at times, about Pakistan, about touring Asia, generally about the conditions.
Because of bad food,
digestion, weather, and so on and so forth. All the complaints have gone since IPL and since it became a richer experience in more senses than one.
Or since more curries are now made in the UK than they are in
exactly,
India. Maybe it's because of that.
That as well. So I do not understand the mother-in-law context. I mean, why would you not send your friend? Why would you not send your brother? I mean, why did he use the word mother-in-law? And I did not understand that as a kid. Today I do.
You are so naive. I was actually reading that there was a really brilliant game that even Inzamam had. He seemed like someone who was really shy and looked like a deer in headlights, but played a brilliant knock.
Oh, that was a semi-final.
Yeah.
But even before that, the game that Pakistan lost to South Africa, which there was a rain rule that came into the picture, and Pakistan, according to Pakistan fans, should have gone on to win. They were the favourites at the time that it started raining. So Inzamam had a great start to his ODI career even before the World Cup. I think hammered a couple of centuries against the then minnows Sri Lanka, but he was as a result picked in the squad, and he did not have a great first 4 matches in the '92 World Cup as well. And he was a precocious talent. A lot had been said about him, something like Babar Azam right now, but Babar Azam has proved himself against a few teams. So he had gone in with that reputation, did not do too well in those first 4 matches, but Imran Khan kept backing him. He kept picking him up, and there was this match against South Africa where he scored his first major score, if I'm not wrong, a 48. And that, I think, is where his confidence probably came back. He again did not have a couple of great matches before getting into that semi-final, but that semi-final then made him. And that was a semi-final in which he probably came into bat when Pakistan needed 100 odd in the last 15 or 120 in fact in the last 15 overs. New Zealand without their captain talisman, Martin Crowe, not leading the side because of a hamstring injury, and Inzamam taking full advantage, taking heavy toll of the bad bowling changes and a lot of other things that went on strategically, tactically, scoring a 60, if I'm not wrong, of 36 to 37 balls, playing at 10 and over, and they needed 120 or 15 overs, won it with an over to spare, and that is where Pakistan got the final.
In those times, to score at that rate, that is pretty brilliant.
The Pakistan's England match in the round robin stage was the game in which Pakistan were bowled out for 74. Should have lost the game. it started raining with England at 20 odd for 1 in 8 overs. Even then, if it had stopped raining, probably 25 over target would have been easy for it. Should have been easy for England. The rain rule meant that had it stopped raining, with England having to chase those runs down in 15 overs, a target of 74 would have become 64. 35 overs lost, just 10 runs reduced. That is how bizarre that rain rule was.
So was this World Cup more about the rain rule than anything else?
Well, we've spoken about a lot of things apart from the rain rule, but rain rule obviously that rain rule obviously took the cake and ended up eating it too.
Yes, it did. To summarize, we've spoken quite a bit about the '92 World Cup, but like your favorite or your top 5 memories. Why not? Why don't we do that?
Well, we can
Begin with like 5?
Number 5.
We'll
go the back.
It's a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 sort of
Okay,
thing.
we do it the other way around.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, to begin with, one of the reasons why I liked the World Cup was because it was different. The jerseys, the day-night cricket, 2 new balls, every team played every other team, South Africa coming in, a great television package, awesome commentary, Channel 9 those days. Yes, a lot of criticism these days, but those days it was awesome to watch. The sound effects, there's a lot of mic effects. So all those things happened in that World Cup. Might have happened before. I did not see it. For me, that was the first time I saw all those things happen. And all of that added to the effect. We spoke about the John T. Rhodes run out, and the sound that came with it also added to that experience. John T. flying in the air, that picture, that video is brilliant to watch. But you add those sound effects to it, and it was something that
it makes it like a complete experience, which for you was the new thing in '92.
It was.
And in fact, if I'm not wrong, first time there were side screens and there was a white ball, and it just adds to the whole. It's like you're watching a new brand of cricket.
So white ball had been used, but not in World Cups.
Yeah, for the World Cup.
Exactly. Now, I had not seen any previous World Cup. So it was my first World Cup and there was white ball. But even the cricket that I'd watched, most of it was a lot of red ball cricket, even in ODIs. There was no T20s, obviously. But talking about all that, that was my number 5.
And let's go on to the next one, number 4.
Yep. I thought the New Zealand tactics, where they started with Mark Greatbatch. They opened with Mark Greatbatch, who smashed the bowlers around as a pinch hitter. He was one of the first few pinch hitters known in those days. Some say Ian Botham had opened before. He was a pinch hitter. Mark Greatbatch did it for New Zealand, did it more regularly than Ian Botham. Deepak Patel opened the bowling for New Zealand. He was an off spinner. Those were not the days where a lot of spinners would bowl. In fact, if I'm not wrong, he was the first spinner to regularly open the bowling. So those tactics and the way they did not start as tournament favorites. New Zealand were not tournament favorites. They did not have a great time in the lead up to the tournament. They went on to win all their matches except the last one against Pakistan. Played Pakistan again in the semi-final and lost it. That second loss to Pakistan in the semi-finals was reading an interesting article about the late Martin Grove being interviewed about what happened in that match, and he injured himself during the game, scored a 90, injured himself, and he had a toss-up between going out to captain and aggravating that hamstring injury and not being fit for the final, or resting out that injury and hoping that New Zealand get through to the final and then play in the final with a less injured leg. He went for the second option, thinking that 265 on that pitch.
Pretty confident that they would make it to the
They would
final.
probably win it from that stage. Did not happen. John Wright captained New Zealand in his absence, and what I read, Martin Crowe was not a very happy chappy.
Tactics discussed beforehand.
What I sense is that tactics were discussed, and John Wright went in with his own mind as a captain, did not follow the script given to him, and surprised a lot of people. But that is what inexperience does to you. Mm-hmm. That is what inexperience in a situation, in a pressure situation like a World Cup semi-final. New Zealand have never got to the final of a World Cup, so that is a pressure by itself. That was the 5th World Cup, and New Zealand never made it to the final, so that's a pressure itself. You are going in with as a favorite. You have not captained this side throughout the tournament. Suddenly you are thrown into the kitchen, and you can't handle the heat. It was probably a matter of that, and you got to give it to Pakistan as well. They batted well.
Of course. You do have to always give the opposition a credit. Now, number 3.
Is Pakistan. Pakistan's win in that World Cup, and it was a comeback from behind win. If you look at all the World Cups that have been played so far, more or less the favorites have gone on to win the tournament. 83, where India won it, was one such exception, and Pakistan winning in 92 was the other one. Pakistan were never favorites going into the tournament, but even during the tournament, when they started off that poorly, lost to India, almost lost to England. They were never going to even get to the semi-finals, according to the bookmakers, according to a lot of fans. A turnaround happened. It was the end stages of the tournament. They had to beat New Zealand in that final game. They did that, got to the semi-final, came back from behind, beat New Zealand again, and then were lucky to beat England as in Botham seconds.
That's something sort of how Pakistan's current brand of cricket continues. We saw that in the Champions Trophy. They didn't start very well against India in their first match, but then they went on to win the Champions Trophy, and they shocked favourites England in the semi-finals in the Champions Trophy in 2017, because that's as far back currently my memory goes. So I guess and it continues for them. It was Imran Khan's last.
It was. You remember him holding that glass crystal?
I actually thought he was going to drop it. I actually thought it was going to fall, and I don't think we've ever seen a crystal World Cup
We've seen
before or after.
Pretty funny trophies in UAE in the
recent yeah.
Biscuits as trophies.
Yeah, those are very weird ones, unless they're gold biscuits.
UAE gold biscuits.
Very possible. Very possible. Number 2, Suneer.
Before that, I did not watch the final. I didn't watch the 92 World Cup final, and the reason was that I had chickenpox.
What timing?
My television conked off.
What timing?
Had I had chickenpox, I could watch it in my own place. But I had chickenpox and the television conked off, which is why I couldn't go out. I couldn't go at anyone's place. No friend would welcome me. Oh, you got chickenpox? Come over. Let's play. Let's watch some World Cup final. So I had to listen to the commentary. I heard all the 100 overs, or nearly the 100 overs of that final, and yep. That is.
See, if you'd known me in 92, I would have invited you over. I'd already had chickenpox by then.
I didn't know too many friends at that time who already had chickenpox.
But that final, I was actually in the other room having a singing class happening, and I just wanted my teacher to go away so that I could go join my family and watch the final.
Where were you?
I was in Delhi. And I just wanted to watch, and I wanted to support England, and
just a couple of hours of flight away. I should have probably taken that flight.
Yes, you probably should have.
If I had known you then, I would have probably done that. But number 2 is India's shoddy performance, and India's shoddy performance to win just 2 matches. Already spoken about it. Beat Pakistan, which was one big thing that happened. Beat Zimbabwe. Should have probably beaten Sri Lanka, who were not as strong as they were later.
It was an abandoned match. The ground was dried with a helicopter.
They had tried to use helicopter to dry the ground. Only 2 balls were possible in that match. I think it was at Mackay that the match was played. Interestingly, Kapil Dev opened in that innings.
Oh, wow.
One of the rare occasions that Kapil Dev opened the batting. It was probably an idea before time. They did not use that idea again. I think they used it once and it did not work too well. And Kapil Dev he never opened the innings again in ODI cricket. And I think that was an idea that they could have continued as a precursor to Tendulkar taking up that role in 1994. Did not happen, but then Tendulkar came in and changed the way cricket was played.
It would have been interesting to see what had happened if that sort of those aggressive ideas would have continued.
Well, there were those ideas, as I said. Mark Greatbatch opening for New Zealand. There was Ian Botham on a couple of occasions opening for England. Because the 15-over rule, the fielding restriction rule also came in during that World Cup, and they tried to take advantage of it. Greatbatch did a great job. He took advantage of it. New Zealand were benefited by it, but not a lot of teams were open to that idea till the '96 World Cup.
With the way Sri Lanka played.
So they started attacking from both ends. Tendulkar used to attack from one end. At the other end, there was not a lot of attacking flair. Probably there was a lack of options. Sri Lanka went all guns blazing in the '96 World Cup.
Yeah, they did. I think also somehow that trend continues again even today, where there's usually one person who is a support, and the other one's the one that's blazing away. Should I do a drum roll now that we're on to the top one thing?
I have a feeling that everyone would have guessed by now because we have spoken so much about it. Number one, the most memorable thing should probably be the least memorable thing. People should forget about it and move on. Is the rain rule, the atrocious rain rule, which kind of was the precursor to how the Duckworth-Lewis system came in. Because by the time it was a 96 World Cup, if I'm not wrong, 99 World Cup, I think was the first time they used the Duckworth-Lewis system. And this was a rain rule that unfortunately was made by Richie Benaud and his group of his committee of the cricket committee, which was very surprising coming from a guy like Richie Benaud, the great late Richie Benaud, being involved in that. And one wonders if it would have been another rain rule, how things might have shaped up. India probably winning against Australia, a big confidence booster. Pakistan probably beating South Africa, whether South Africa would have been gone through. South Africa in the semi-final, 22 of 13. Well, it was a tricky chase, 22 of 13. Make no mistake, even during these days, 22 of 13 is not the easiest chase. 22 of 13 those days was never going to be easy, but at least it would have had an exciting end. It was a farce in the end.
It gives the team a chance, a hope. It makes them think differently as well.
That underarm delivery, Australia versus New Zealand, where the rules were not written to outlaw the underarm delivery, it happened after that ball, and this rain rule. It, I think, needed an event as big as what happened for it to be removed. Had that semi-final not happened, probably we would have still continued having that rain rule into the 96 World Cup and so on and so forth till we had gotten to a point where such a big incident happened.
And where people would have gotten frustrated and would start writing tweets on it.
I didn't think it would have lasted 20 years or so.
So those are your top five. The whole new look of a World Cup. New Zealand's tactics, Pakistan's comeback, India's shoddy performance, and the rain rule.
Yep, those are my five.
That's really cool, Suneer. I think I didn't know so much about the 92 World Cup until you didn't tell me that it's your favorite, and then we started reading about it. It's quite exciting of all the things that changed around that time to bring us to where we are today.
I think it was a turning point in the history of cricket World Cups.
It certainly seems like that. So does that mean next time we get to talk about my World Cup?
Of course it does. After all the taunts and all the sarcastic remarks in this podcast, you think I'll say no to it? No, you won. You win the battle. 2003 World Cup is the best World Cup.
No, I'm not telling you to tell me it's the best. We just have to talk about it.
We will.
And I want to know where you were in 2003. I mean, 11 years.
Yeah, it was not a great time otherwise. The Cricket World Cup, the 2003 Cricket World Cup was a savior for me because I was not having a great time outside it.
Okay, great. Then I'm glad we'll talk about it from my perspective because
We're not going to be talking about my perspective.
Yeah, great. So we should be back at some point for my favorite World Cup.
Hopefully before the 2019 World Cup.
It better be, Suneer. What nonsense is that? That's still like 3.5 months away.
Yes.
Terrible.
Yes, terrible. I've been hearing that word far too often on this podcast. Terrible.
Yep. Okay. We're done then, I guess. So that's it from us, guys. Bye, Suneer.
Bye, Shruti.
Bye.